We're recording so we can start. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, you get this in the afternoon, or hopefully, you should get this in the afternoon. Welcome to this week's Business Times Weekly Nigeria podcast. So, usually we do this every week, talking about the key uh, business headlines that happens in Nigeria and around the world, not just Nigeria. Nigeria is a global village these days with the internet, so things are happening everywhere, and they affect you and I. They affect our pockets. They affect our finances. And so, with me today is Adeyinka Kayode, and he is an IT professional. Now, please note the fact that he's an IT professional is not the reason why we have lots of stories around tech. They just happen to be what dominated the headlines this week so far around the world. So we're going to be discussing tech, fintech, IT, tech, and of course the money angle to things. So thank you, Kayode, for showing up. And how are you doing?
Thank you very much, Onome. It's always a pleasure interacting with you. It's also a great pleasure on my part being on your podcast. It's practically like my first podcast series I've ever been on. So let's see where this conversation takes us.
Oh yeah, and I think this is probably the second podcast series I'm handling. So it's also a learning curve. Essentially, we just try to run through the stories, and I wanted a very conversational approach because I think you have lots of podcasts that discuss lots of subjects under the sun, but we don't have enough podcasts around business. Okay, so let's jump in. Very first story, and interestingly, I think this is one that I'm not seeing a lot of conversation about, but I think in typical Nigerian fashion, it's when it kicks off, then everybody's going to start screaming, that, oh, we don't like this, we don't like that, when did this happen, when consulted, when and all that. The CBN has issued, and the CBN is short for Central Bank of Nigeria. The CBN has issued guidelines which kick in May 1st, 2026, around BVN amendments and banking security. BVN
Yeah.
is your banking verification number. Um, the key changes are banks can restrict accounts for 24 hours over suspicious transactions. Um, your phone numbers linked to your BVN can only be changed once. And just generally, there's just I would say a more serious approach to banking security. So, do you think that these guidelines are realistic? That's one. And two, do you think that the CBN will backtrack? From my experience, generally, as an outsider looking into the CBN, we we tend to have a more, I would say, more measured approach. The previous, I'm trying to pick my words to be as diplomatic as possible. The previous CBN governor was a bit, will I say around? Let's say the previous CBN governor was a bit tough talking compared to the
Yeah.
CBN governor. What do you think of the guidelines? What are your thoughts about these guidelines?
Okay. I think first and foremost, while I always tend to take both the advocate position, but also looking at the challenges of that, and then also kind of like take the other side of the argument. For me, it's a laudable idea. If you're looking at things from the serious perspective of things, and that for me comes to that position of being able to address things like kidnapping incidents, security-related incidents. You have issues surrounding fraud. You have issues surrounding weak identity management, and also the challenge of being able to address cases when they arise with speed. So that ability to be able to restrict identity and tie that identity to a unique value, in this case, phone number, a laudable idea. So, I mean, if an incident happens, you are able to quickly trace that person, identify the person, and then carry out your proper investigation, and then appropriate sanctions take place. In the sense of it, is laudable. But then we look again at other aspects um, to things. While on the policy side, it looks okay. On the operational bit, on the technical part, it's going to be messy. I mean, there are multiple identity programs that have come up over the years. I mean, we still haven't forgotten the BVN capture incident that happened. I think it was that 2014, 2015, where we had to, where the government tried to mandate the banks to be able to do like a proper capture and then tie this um, unique identifier, BVN in this case, to each person and then map that to account. And then we now had to go through that conversation of looking at the peculiarities of our telecommunication situation. Situations where people have multiple phone numbers and then multiple bank accounts, and then being able to say that which of the which of the phone numbers I would have will be tied to which account. So I mean, you had those challenges then, and then you now had a moving goalpost of and off-ramp time frame where did that program would go live, and then you had multiple postponement before eventually the program was able to go live. Then we also had this conversation of will you have BVN capture people below the ages of 18? What is the cutoff time frame? And then you now have also the problem of data being in silos. Silos in this case mean you have data that doesn't talk to each other. You have your immigration's data in one section, you have this BVN under section, you then have your NIN, your national identification number tied in different sections. And then you're having all that conversation. We've seen all the challenges, but there is no proper way to be able to be consistent in allowing a federated system that allows these systems to operate across the platforms. Um, I think for me, the challenge will be what is the operational modalities in order to be able to actualize this policy that has come up. What is the government's plan? How do they want to go about it? Who are the stakeholders? How are the stakeholders brought into the conversation? How is the messaging of the policy? How will it be driven? Who is going to own it? Who is going to implement it? Who is going to drive it? Who is going to even test the solution? What is the time frame? What are the modalities for complaints? How will it be handled? Which parties will, what are the various rules and the stakeholders who will be part of that process? How will they be able to work together? Or else you just end up creating another agency, creating another project, and then you find out that you have bottlenecks that will now be brought into those projects, and then it doesn't, it never sees the life of day. So for me, laudable idea, but what are the modalities? I think once that has been properly addressed by all the stakeholders, and stakeholders in this case would be the banks, will be the security agencies, will be the CBN as well. Once that has been brought to light, and there's proper coordination across the state governments, the local governments. Once all that has been brought into the conversation, I suspect we should be able to have like some clarity on how the project can be a success.
Hmm. My biggest worry is, I mean, the guidelines are great, but one thing I've seen is some banks I mean, when it comes to execution capacity, I remember the whole linking your NIN to your bank account thing. Some banks you had to physically go to the bank. to do that, which didn't make sense to me. Why do I have to do that? And then you had some banks which had the sense to say, look, we'll give you a link or code, or we'll give you some link. You can do it on your phone, on your app. So
Yeah.
I don't, I hope that we see there's a uniform frame, because you're going to have some banks that are just going to say, you know what, you're not interested in this. You look at it,
Hmm.
just have a BVN, there's an issue. Let's say if you're going to shut down your bank account, you have to come to the bank, maybe, and God help you if they have a crowd, everybody comes in, there are issues, they say, you know what, your network is down. It's going to take you 3, 4 days, just stop. And I think this also kinds of filters into the whole open banking conversation, and I don't know if that will ever take place because it's this whole banks operating in silos. Everybody is
Yep.
holding on to the information,
On
and
the data. Yep.
nobody is
Yep.
willing to share. So we keep hearing, "Oh, we're going to kick off open banking." Is it happening? I don't know. Um, we just have to talk about it. So really, I guess maybe what people need to do is you have to look at previous previous policies by the CBN, and you can kind of group Nigerian banks into two, maybe the efficient banks and the inefficient banks. So you know that if you are using an inefficient bank, you better be getting ready for chaos. And hopefully, if your bank is efficient, well, you don't have to worry and all. So I think that would be an interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I don't agree with the part that says you could kind of limit it to the number of times you can um,
Change your phone number.
change your phone number, because
Yeah.
you don't
I
have
I
you
I
don't have you
I
don't
think
have
I think
network
that
quality.
yes. If I was going to come to that bit that I mean you look at past policies, right? And then you try and measure it against operational capacity. I did look at the bit that talked about a 24 hours time frame, for example, if you're um I mean, if there is an AML incident or KY, or an AML incident, for example, and an AML in this case, anti-money laundering incident, for example, or suspicion, because I mean, then you might receive an inflow, right, and your account is suspended. Now, in a situation where, I mean, you have so many challenges, anything can go wrong. So if you don't have an update, and you are in the middle of nowhere, network connectivity, that means you cannot take any action. I mean, Nigeria is a pretty um, um, trading oriented society. What would happen to people that are on the field carrying out trading activities on the road, on the field? How do you want them to be able to have access to the modalities by which they can address some of these issues? So I think um, there should be some process in place to mitigate the process. I was a bit worried when you talked about a tier system. Now, we know that some banks have more branches than others. So in a situation where those ones have, I mean, those with more branches, they will be able to attract more crowd to be able to abstract the process or handle the process. But what about those who have fewer branches? What will happen to their customers? And then again, you know the culture that is very prevalent, and that is the tendency to wait to the last
Last
moment to
minute.
do anything. Yeah, it could be an act of omission or commission in this case. What's going to happen when you now have a crowd that runs in to try and carry out the process? And there's a tendency by government, by even people generally, to say that, well, it's your fault. If you waited to the last moment, whatever you see, you take it like that. But in this case, there is that responsibility by government. It's a contract by government to the people to make sure that the challenges or the skepticism that might arise as a result of distrust, because Nigeria is a low trust society. So if you already have that, and people have this tendency that it's government, they will give grounds or they will postpone, there is that possibility they would not carry out this task. that they need to. So the planning for me is more important than the rollout.
Hmm. I mean, I guess we'd have to watch and see. I think luckily, uh, I, I mean, for the popular platforms like your OPay, PalmPay, Moniepoint, I'll be watching them closely. I want to see how they are going to execute execute this and all because a lot of them, I mean, they have physical branches here and there, but
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who has stepped into any of the physical branches, and that's I think is a testament to maybe the efficiency of
Yeah.
how they work. So I would be interested in seeing how they execute that, and who knows, it's possible this could be kicked down the road. But I think one thing I quite like about the current CBN governor, and you can tell from his speeches, you can see this is someone who's extremely organized. So he will always say, here's what we're going to do in this area, here's what we're going to do in this area. And he'll give his reasons for doing so. So you see, for instance, you have more engagement in terms of just pushing out their policies, communicating their policies. You're having the governor doing speeches here and there. So I would watch carefully to see how they execute. And luckily, in typical Nigerian fashion, if things get critical, people will come out to complain and maybe they'll shift it a few weeks. You know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I do think hopefully one day, because really when you think about it, and it's unfortunate that I don't think it's going to be solved anytime soon.
Mm.
Why do we need multiple ID systems?
Yeah.
We need that unification. So why do I need this an adult? Why should I have why do I need a BVN and then I need an NIN? And what else again? Why do I need both? Why can't my NIN and BVN function in like manner? Or what? I mean, I know we don't want to go the whole Chinese route, which is say, look, you're just going to have a social security number that identifies you for everything that you do.
Mm.
We because I think the distrust for government is there because people are going to say, look, why does the government want this? I mean, I won't be
Yeah.
surprised. You would have lots of Nigerians who don't have an NIN, who don't have a BVN, and who transact bank cash financial transactions mostly by cash or family and friends with those things. So I think ultimately I would like to see some handshake across the
Across.
regulators, either the CBN on one hand, the those behind the NIN, I'm guessing it's interior and immigration, have everybody sit down in the room, put all this together because we may go 3, 4 years down the line and we're still going to say, hey, you know what? Um, you have to do this again. And it's just like the whole SIM registration thing. Uh, I still know people who once in a while the GSM operator tells them that look, you've done your whole NIL linkage, but you have to come in and do it again. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
After a couple of years, I mean, I'm now wondering, hey, but what happened? What went wrong? I mean, that's the story for another day. There's a backstory behind, all these
Mm.
changing of softwares and changing of things. But I do think
Yeah.
we need,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't make sense because
Mm.
why do we have this? I mean, it feels like every 3, 4 years or whenever somebody gets into office and they just unroll the entire thing. And this isn't a CBN thing. This is more maybe I would say on the telco side of things. Why are you constantly upgrading systems and just turning the entire house upside down? Um, that clearly needs to change because really, ultimately, you cannot plan without data. So I'm guessing the the CBM is saying, look, we need a more accurate view of the Nigerian customer. Let's see. I mean I'll be looking forward to maybe the next MPC meeting. I maybe get some context I'm just wondering, and maybe I'll also look around for my sources. What what prompted this, and what kind of data uh, is the CBN looking forward to? And maybe for the banks as well. The challenge with the banks is banks have so much data they're sitting on it, they don't optimize, So would this prompt anything interesting? So I guess we'll have to watch and
I,
see how
I,
it
I
goes.
think I think I think speaking to what you said, and I do know at least with the little that I was privy to at some point, is that the conversations for handshake between different agencies has been ongoing, right? I do know um, that there should be. I don't know whether it's been firmed up and done. The conversation between the NIN, National Identification Number, and BVN. Then I think there uh, is some conversation on the tax ID as well. Um, Now, how far those conversations have gone, how firmed up they have become, I mean, that just like you stated, government come, government go, government go, also government come. Everybody comes in with his own idea of what personal identifiable information they want and how much of those personal identifiable information they intend to keep and also use. There's also been that conversation of agencies also jealously guiding their data. Again, it's become like a fiefdom that they've kept and prevented others from accessing. And especially considering how much they've invested in terms of cash and infrastructure, it's also been that thing of I want to keep this for me and use it even though I could very well collaborate and have this handshake across borders and actually use that information to be able to enriching lives. Because I mean, if you ask certain information that has to do with demographic distribution, you are not going to get anything. Or if you get, by the time you look at it uh, holistically, you would see that it doesn't add up. I mean, like, look at the amount of information or pushback that has been on social media with respect to the piggyverse data
Mhm.
report that came out recently. And you can see that everybody is not comfortable with the information provided. Okay, uh, X number, 20% or 30% of Nigerians earn less than 100,000 a month. I mean, we all know that it's actually worse than that. It
Yeah.
is worse than that. Yeah, but there is nowhere to go to. I mean, if you go to MBS and ask them for that data, I don't know if it exists. Uh, the
I
banks
mean,
will have,
I, the banks will have. I think the MBS will have it, but after the whole, that controversial report that then after that the
exactly,
MBS disappeared, which
exactly.
which I think was, I mean, I think that was embarrassing, really, because
Yeah,
even if certain people in authority had an issue with that report, and that report I think was rather flawed. I mean, even beyond the flawed nature of that report, um, I think that for security purposes, a report like that should have been published, because I mean,
should
because
have been
obviously
published.
we know kidnapping is lucrative and all that, but
Yeah,
we, it doesn't have to be so front and center. But I mean, worst case scenario, the reports could have been pulled down, but you didn't need to crash the entire website and say, "Oh, you got
just
hacked."
to
Come on,
prevent that kind of information from coming
yeah,
out.
you didn't need
Because
to do that, because
there should obviously be a
they took a
process
hit.
for releasing. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they took a
So
hit. The credibility of the MBS took a hit, and it hasn't recovered because everybody knows
yeah,
that this was really hard. Somebody didn't like their reports, and all. So
yeah,
there's always that issue, and even with the piggyvest one, I mean, I've skimmed through the thing, and people's argument is okay. They took a sample size, but the reality is that is, in my view, that's a sample size of the population that you need to plan, because whoever, I
yes,
mean, obviously it's piggyverse users who are probably, I would guess, anywhere between 18 to 40s who are fairly literate,
Yes.
live in urban areas
Urban areas.
mostly.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean,
By
what
and
else
large.
do you want? By and large, what else do you
Exactly.
want? That's a fair sample.
Yeah.
Anything other than that, go ask the government or go ask
Mm-hmm.
or ask the bank. So, I mean, there is always that issue, and even now you'd see people who say, I'm not doing anything data because I don't know what the government is going to use my data
You
for.
use it for data. Exactly.
So I'm not going to feel it. Even when it just have that low trust nature, like COVID, there are people
Mm.
who just refuse to take the COVID vaccine because they said, hey, I don't know what the government is up to. I'm not taking any vaccine that is pushed by the government. Let
Exactly.
me look for a private arrangement or let me look for something. I'm not doing anything government related. So
Mm.
there's there's always that worry, but I think that hopefully we see more engagement on this. This
Yeah.
this as CBN, I would say, is a bit more has stepped up in terms of communication. It's way better um, than the previous previous management. But I think we need to see more campaigns around this, and hopefully we don't have too much of a disruption. I mean, some people might argue that look, you see as Nigerians can be very sardonic. They might say, look, I don't have money, so they go to TVN banks can do what they like. The day that I
Mm.
get money comes into my account, then I'm going to sort it out. So right now, I don't
Exactly.
have money. I'm not doing anything about it,
Doing anything
which is
about it.
weird,
Yeah.
but that's just how some people reason. I'm not going to do anything about it because I don't even have money. Uh,
Yeah.
so we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Next to money points, for those who are not Nigerians, I'd say probably money point is one of the most popular fintechs in the country. It's it's popular for a bunch of reasons. Um, I say it's popular maybe for the blue POS terminals I see everywhere. I mean, it's a conversation for another day, but I think in 2026, we really should not have people sitting under umbrellas with POS. I don't think I don't think that's I don't think that's an optimal way. That's not a great means of employment for people. I just don't think it works. But hey, it's happened and it's serving the need. So money points, the ubiquitous blue POS systems everywhere. It's quite popular with even the merchants, a lot of small businesses, banks, and even for me. I mean, I personally use Money Point, the app, um, and it was just the simple economics for me. If most of the merchants have a money points platform, and it makes more sense for me to get a money points app because it's money point to money points, and that removes the friction of crossing different networks, and also that was how I ended up there. So money points acquired all the restaurant management software. No idea of how much was spent, but I guess as with all things tech, we get the gist sometime later.
Sometime later. Yeah.
The interesting part for me, and which I'm curious about, I mean, for the public, what a lot of people were focused on was, oh, and which I guess that's a surface level thinking. Oh, Money Points, I think it was a few months ago, had this report we did, which I found interesting, where they broke because they have access to data as well, where they broke down, oh, this is what Nigerians who use our platforms spend money on. So I think they spent a couple of I think 8 billion or this some billions on restaurant spending. And so people thought of it that way. That's the surface level thinking. But for me, yes, there's the business side of things, which is how can we do some form of inventory financing. But what I'm wondering is what what more do you think they would be wanting to do? with this acquisition. Clearly, it's there's some inventory financing play. We see your books. Let's offer you financing and all. But beyond that, is there anything that they can do? What do you think was the rationale behind this?
Okay. That's a fantastic question. I remember. I can't actually remember the MD of which of the banks, but it was some. It was like seminar or symposium or something he held, and there was the conversation surrounding I mean, which was the bank of the future back in the 90s, and it was GT Bank.
Yeah.
And I mean, I recall my first GT Bank was um account that I had was when I was in, and looking at it at that time, I mean, how much really uh, was the minimum balance? Was zero balance. And
Mm-hmm.
over the years, I've still had that same account. It's an account I still use till date. So you see things like that, and then you kind of like have an idea of what Moniepoint is trying to do. Now, the small businesses, the small enterprises of today could very well become the Dangote, the Boa Cement of tomorrow. How realistic that will be is going to be driven by how much they are able to embed themselves into the operational activities of these small businesses. Now, the food industry is big. I think I was reading up somewhere, I think it should be in the trillions of naira across all verticals, whether it be in the fast food business, the restaurant operational businesses, and the likes. So when you see that they're starting at that angle, I mean, they are not doing general retail, they are going into the food business. You see, you kind of like have an idea of what they are trying to do, because it's a pretty difficult business to crack, especially on the inventory part, being able to auto reconcile transactions, also able to see what the flow actually would look like, your receivables, your payables, and the other various aspects of the operations of the restaurant, or what I'll just call basically the food business. Then being able to get into that business and then decide, okay, let's handle just like you stated, the inventory part as well as the credit part. I foresee a situation where they eventually, once they are well grounded and they're able to conquer that market, they would also spread into all the other aspects of retail financing or credit financing for small businesses. Because as those businesses grow, over time, I project and see Moniepoint transitioning to actual setting up, actually moving up the banking the banking space. So basically, move from that microfinance outlook to commercial investments and the like. The time scale for that, I cannot clearly state. But I see this vertical acquisition as some play on access to data, just like the banks are sitting on a lot of data that they can flog and generally get out insight on. They are also trying to do that, and also saying that they can move up the scale in terms of operation.
I mean, I totally agree with you. In fact, some might argue, and I suspect that they're probably working on this. I would be, if I was on the Money Point team, I would be looking at a national banking, like a proper full-scale national commercial bank license
Exactly.
rather than a
Yeah.
microfinance thing, because you have that skill. And I'm also curious, and probably I'm going to dig around. I think I knew a few banking tech, fintech people who probably know this. I also wonder um, how much how much of staff salaries they would have passing through their systems, because if I can get a hook of a company's inflow and outflow, and I can pitch that I have staff use money points, that then gives me insights into consumer data, which I'm sure, I mean, they might have, but it might not be. it might not be specialized. So obviously you have
Yeah.
thousands or hundreds of thousands of POSs everywhere, swiping
Everywhere.
everywhere,
Yeah.
money point. So that
Yep.
gives them access to data, consumer data. But I
Mm-hmm.
think having that data from staff that work in SMEs, that will give them another layer of things. And the interesting thing, and I don't think people have clocked it, is the fact that if you have the business using money points, you have staff using money points, those those relationships tend to be very sticky. I mean, I use GT Bank for instance, um, because I mean, for my dad, it was quite easy. As a student, it was quite easy for him to send me money because
Spend money.
Citibank was
Exactly.
close to his house. I mean, I
Exactly.
started off with Union Bank because Union Bank was opposite his office, so that was easy. But I
Yeah.
didn't like it. I didn't like
Mm-hmm.
Union Bank. Was it convenient for me? It was far off in school. And then GT came, and then of course the other PO pays, Pampay, and all that. But for me, the beauty about GT was quite simple.
Yeah.
I I didn't have to carry a passbook, right? And I remember back in the day this is you're talking maybe 2004, 2005. I had to carry a passbook when I would go to
Mm.
a Union Bank
Union
or
Bank.
when I would go
Or
to
First Bank.
a first bank. I mean,
Yeah.
that still has to carry a passbook. Yeah, but with the GT Bank, I didn't need that. All I needed to do was to go to the bank, pick a piece of paper and one page and sign, and I'm good to go. So I don't think people have clocked it, or maybe they have and they're just focusing on the large scale corporates. That once you have a generation of people who uh, are locked in to a money point or own pay or palm pay, it's going to be very difficult to unlock them. So I mean, so as much as people would grumble about the GT Bank when they had app issues, and yes, there was some attrition during the app upgrade process, but you still have a lot of
Mm.
people stick to your GT Bank, First
GT
Bank,
Bank. Yeah.
Access Bank
Yep.
because they have
Exactly.
scale, and
Yeah.
scale is hard to you need that scale because
To get.
push comes to
Yeah.
shove, you need that. You need those systems, that skill that they have. So I'm kind of interested in what else they would do. Um, and do you see do you see money points one day listing on the NGX? Do you think that will happen? I mean, if I were them, I wouldn't do that, which is not a nice thing to say about the NGX. But the honest truth is, I would not list on the NGX. Do you see them doing that someday? Will it be ever possible? They might say, hey, let's go list on the NGX.
I would encourage them to do a subsidiary, um, a microcosm of or a unit of the behemoth they are currently building. And the reason why is I think their dream should be bigger. Um, go to FTSE or go to Nasdaq or NYSE. That's where I think they should play. Considering the fact that I want to strongly believe that the dream is not just the Nigerian market, because I mean, I guess that they should conquering that could be a valid dream of theirs, but probably like some subsidiary or some micro unit within the entity can list on the Nigerian stock market, but the dream definitely has to be bigger than what it is. And the reason why is this. One of the biggest things that I expect a Nigerian financial institution to be able to achieve is leave that local market, right? And go offshore, see what's out there and enable that platform that would allow transactions to happen ubiquitously and round the clock. I mean, you are in Seychelles, you are in Angola, and your account is in Nigeria. You should be able to carry out transactions. I mean, that we have a situation where we have fragmented, if a highly fragmented payment space in Africa is a disgrace to Africa. So I believe that should be the dream. If it's a 5 or 10, I mean, we can already see. companies like Paystack already doing that. The presence in South Africa, their presence in Kenya, if I'm not mistaken. I'm hearing conversations about Rwanda and the likes. I think that that should be the vision for Moniepoint. If the listing on Nigerian stock market comes up, yeah, just create some subsidiary, or if they are fortunate enough and don't want to go through the drama of acquiring a national banking license, then acquire one of these banks over time and get that one listed. The capacity is there, it will be there over time, but there are innovative solutions or innovative products you can keep working on. What that will look like will evolve and be unraveled over time. But I think the key focus is more product development, bring more products to the market, bring more innovation, and then let Nigerians see what is possible. Because I mean, I don't know why in this time and age, irrespective of the challenges, whether infrastructure or security, we can't have tap to pay that is fully functional and working, or cardless payment. And I'm not talking about the fragmented cardless or challenge cardless payment systems that we have today, but actual cardless payment systems that can work. I believe Moniepoint is already there because I mean, you look at the innovation they brought around the POS systems now, for example. They've been able to innovate with that. So I expect more solutions, and I believe Nigeria will be a very tiny market that they will play in over time.
I totally agree with you. Even though what I hear for tap to pay is people are a bit skeptical. I
Yeah,
think it's just Nigerian skepticism around tap to pay, which
innovation.
I find
Yeah,
weird because I mean you're already moving around with the card, which is a piece of plastic, but why why are you skeptical? In actual sense, it's actually more efficient than me having to manually put the card into the machine and punch a button and it prints out. I don't I just start to pay. So I heard some people are working on solutions around it, but it's just that Nigerian skepticism around it. And then maybe from the regulatory side of things, people are worried about chargebacks, which is to say, look,
yeah,
if fraud happens, who's is going to be on the hook? uh with the customer say, look, man, whoever goes to tap your card, that's none of my business. You're on your own. You go secure your card, you know. Or like, hey, someone physically, but I can argue that look, if somebody physically takes a card to go withdraw, the liability is still on them. So is there much different from a tap to? But we do need that. We actually do need that. I mean, for the London or NYC listing, I I think it's doable. The question is, would they want to do so? I don't know. I mean, I kind of there are a couple of big wig investors um in Money Points. Some of them have listed entities on the NGX, so sure they'll be open to that. But would what I don't know is, and maybe someday would get that info to the founders themselves. Would they want to list? I mean, I guess it's early days. They're not, maybe they're more focused on growing the business, but would they want to list on the NGX or the NYSC or the LSC? I think that would be an interesting conversation to have with them. So yeah, I think it's going to happen. I would go on a limb and say in another 5 to 7 years, I think we're going to get a major Nigerian startup listing on the
yes,
NYSE or LSE. And I'm not looking at the interswitch, which has kind of dragged for a while. In fairness to them, every time I mean, maybe they were just sometimes, the cards don't all come into shape because I know at a point in time, interswitch was really close to listing, and then you had poor macros, so that had to be paused. So I guess someday that will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised. One of the fintechs should find their way to stock exchange, and that would be because the brand equity is there, and this is why I mean I'm sure the guys at the NGX are probably tired of myself and Charles and every other person. But I just feel they're not doing enough because
Yeah.
if you take now, everybody's focused on when is when is time to going to list the refinery. Great, but
Mm.
there are several fintechs that you could get listed
Yeah. Very low
that
hanging fruits. Yeah.
low hanging fruits may not be as big as a refinery, but I think that the management at the NGX needs to sometimes have a long-term view. So it's not about getting big listings. You could get small listings that draw people, to the market. It was like
To
MTN,
increase the depth
right?
in the market. Yeah.
I mean, the last sell down that MTN South Africa did, that brought a lot of people into the market because they could associate
Yeah.
with the brand. MTN did a heck of a job pushing pushing that offer. So I wasn't the big. I don't think that was the biggest offer ever, but then you've had bigger offers uh, after that. But that was huge. I mean, when it comes to raising money, the banks do a good job of that. So I hope it happens. I guess in another 5 to 7 years, I expect it to happen. I just don't know which of the entities is going to list. And which kind of brings me to the next story. I keep hearing from time to time, but I think it would be nice. It would be nice if we had some of the discos. I mean, the Gencos are listed and very liquid, but maybe if we had some of the discos listed, maybe people would have a bit more sympathy, or maybe to bring more pressure because if you have a wider shareholder base, and every time people complain about them, then maybe there's more pressure. So electricity discos, distribution companies, and it's almost like a seasonal thing in Nigeria, which annoys me because when you look at the country, Nigeria is just full of low quality problems. And problems are not a nice thing to have, but there are problems everywhere. But I just feel in 2026, power light security should not be rocket science in the country. So these schools are attributing the latest wave of blackouts to the declining output from hydroelectric plants, which, yeah, we hear that all the time. Another story said, hey, we're not getting enough gas. The gas people say they owed money. So I think the question and the interesting thing about power is you maybe it's a Nigerian thing. We have a rather peculiar way of solving problems, or we don't like to approach issues holistically. Uh, do you think that in our lifetime we're going to have a huge chunk of Nigeria experiencing regular power? I'm not even talking about electrifying the bulk of the country, but for where the electricity is, do you ever think we're going to have regular electricity? I'm not saying 247, 247 may be a stretch, but do you think that this power issue can one day be hacked?
I okay. The answer to that question is a very big, is a bit complex in the sense that I mean, there's no need to overflow the issue of why we are where we are when it comes to our reliance on hydro challenges with addressing gas flaring in the Niger Delta, um, decentralized grid systems, the challenge of decentralizing the grid, as well as all the other. I mean, we flogged those issues countless times. But one thing we can look at is we can identify periods when there is that initial seriousness from government, and then either probably when there's a new government that comes into power, or there is that initial movement on the part of, let's say, new management or a new minister comes in, and we can have a glimpse of what a protracted period of stable electricity, or maybe during the dry season or during some aspect of the raining season. And you can see like a protracted period of 18 hours of light or 16 hours of light. So looking at that, Yes, it is possible to achieve. But the question is, you see all those other factors that have brought the country to a standstill. Can we get that understanding that, look, and it speaks to all the other problems in the country, and that consistent thing is, are we patriotic enough to accept that we can make short-term sacrifices for long-term benefits? I keep saying something. If I tell my friends this, I say, look, if we all agree that we all need to make sacrifices for something, and we all agree that making that sacrifices for that particular thing we hope to achieve will make us suffer temporarily. The suffering temporarily could be 5 years, could be 6 years. And after that short-term suffering of 5 to 6 or 7 years, we would have 60 years of prosperity. The question is, are we willing to take that short-term hit for long-term benefit? If we cannot address that question, then just like we have problem with power, we'll have problem with political decision making, we'll have problems with micro economic uh, activities that we need to address. We'll have problems with fiscal reforms. We'll have problems with even security. If you, I mean, my explanation might seem simplistic, but if you look at it from the whole, eventually you realize that the sum of the parts makes the whole. We all know. I mean, there's any child you ask, everybody knows what the problem. Oh, political will, security, um, corruption, incompetence. Everybody knows all that. But can all these stakeholders, because I mean, everybody is a stakeholder in the process, but can all the stakeholders accept that, look, instead of making profit of the problem, can we all just sacrifice our desires for profit and look at the whole and say, look, you know what? Let's all just make that short-term sacrifice for the. I think the conversation will move forward. That's my own understanding of things. But to say that we'll be able to, if we continue like this, we'll solve the problem. I don't think so. Decentralizing the grid that has been passed, raising a bond to address some of the receivables on the part of the disco, nothing has moved. Nobody's still willing to come forward to say, look, oh, we need this aspect to be dealt with. Okay, we will go ahead and do this. So as long as we continue to have these conversations, I call them all motion, no direction, we will continue to have this, but the problem will persist.
I mean, I think for me, I think the challenge we've had with the past space is we we it's a blend of things. And the problem with Nigeria is we've always gotten one part of the equation right and the other part wrong. So if you look at the Obasanjo years, um, there was the NIPP thing, which you tried to do, and some will argue, well, okay, you created power plants, but where's your gas to power them? You didn't work on that side of things, but that
Mm,
was there. Um, and then after the you had Jonathan, I'm not too sure what Jonathan did in terms of power. The previous government, the Buhari administration, kind of they initiated the Siemens conversation to some extent. I think what we need, and I think what would fix power in this country, is you need a president who is personally interested in fixing this. You need a competent minister of power,
yep,
and you need the someone who has the ability to bring all parties to
to the
a
table.
table. So you're going to have, because what we're seeing is we attempt to fix parts of the problem. I mean, you're addressing the Genco receivables for the Genco, doing all that. Great, but you can sort out legacy government debt for the Gencos. The Discos, and I mean, a lot of Discos are
There
struggling.
is no
Some of them are
conversation.
actually
Yeah, yeah.
insolvent.
Many of them
So
are bankrupt. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're not solving that. And then when you come to the discourse, the ultimate thing that you need to do is you need to effectively meter this entire country. You need to effectively meter the country, and you need to make the theft of electricity a serious offense. I think you actually need to see people uh, stay in jail for that, and it needs to be visibly seen. But yeah, yeah, I said, man, I mean, say, look, man, I didn't kill anybody. I just stole power, but that's stealing, man.
Yeah.
So you need all these things fixed. And then when it comes to the metering, um, some of the gencos want to some of the discos want to sort out metering themselves for whatever reason, but I just don't think that that works because you're going to have a case whereby some discos sort out metering for some parts of the population, and then some discos will say, you know what, I'm not interested in metering. I'm just going to do my estimated billing. So I think you need someone who has the capacity to bring all parties to a table and face it. And unfortunately, I mean, we're in 2026. I think elections are what, next year. So serious governance is winding down.
Yep.
Um, Current Minister of Power, I,
He's on his
I,
own
I
timeline.
don't think, I don't think it, let's try to be dramatic. Let's just say I think he's ill suited for the job. So you need to get somebody who's better suited for the job, even though some people might argue that the power portfolio is a poison chalice. So it doesn't matter who you put there. The issues are so naughty that they're going to
I
be
don't so that
program
conversation
of failure.
I don't think so. I think we've created monsters in Nigeria. We've created monsters nobody wants to tackle. It's like, I mean, it still speaks to things like, I mean, the amnesty program, for example. That is another conversation I don't want us to dwell on. But it's like, look, instead of addressing the issue, let's give a sacrifice to the gods, right? But nobody is addressing why the gods angry. So if we continue in that direction, it's not going to solve. I mean, just like you stated, you must be able to call the bluffs of everybody. Those who have become non-state actors, who are beholden to their own interests, and government must bend to them, must be made to understand they don't have that power. The power they derive is because government has ceded authority to them. I mean, so you can't have a situation where um, somebody determines the direction of things, and that person is not government. Government creates policies. Government is the entity that has a social contract with the people, not entities that are powers unto themselves. So, because I mean, if we continue along this trajectory, what we'll probably have realistic timeline I see is that large urban areas will have reliable power supply because they would
Yeah.
create their own arrangements. I mean, you can look at places like Bonny now, you see what they've been able to achieve. And we're going to have other holdouts like that. 5 to 10 years, you would see areas that would have power supply. In fact, in some states, like I mean, what Abia State is doing, if they can be consistent along that trajectory, will it be affordable? That's a different conversation. But availability, if they go along that trajectory, they're able to attract industries and they're able to scale. Places like maybe Ogun State, Lagos State, they will attract industries. But you see all those hinterland places where there isn't much focus on good governance or that focus on social contract, people will fall through the cracks. And then that puts more pressure on these areas that have gotten their acts right. So it is it becomes even a security issue for the states who will get it right. Because what you will now have is a situation where those places not living up to their responsibilities will pull down the places that are doing the right thing. So unfortunately, a large chunk of what you can see. we'll definitely now end up with urban areas concentrated with some level of efficiency. That again is open for interpretation, what that efficiency will look like. And I'm not saying efficiency at the level of what you have in developed countries, but some level of efficiency that those who will come from rural areas will look at and marvel. We'll now have those kind of arrangements. While when you now look into places in rural areas, being able to achieve even 4 hours of power supply, maybe in a week, will be seen as luxury. Because not only will you have a system where there will be no subsidy for them, there will be no plans for them because they'll be written off as not profitable. So the longer this problem persists, the more problematic and difficult it will become. And again, it's this thing you notice with state government. Federal government has taken some things off is taking off some things off the executive list, giving states the ability to be able to take up some of these responsibilities. A forward-thinking state, flush with cash, should be able to sit down and say, look, okay, these areas, which areas can we focus on that will bring? Because I mean, you kind of like try to understand what the thought process is. A system that allows them for more employment of citizens would increase wealth in the state. There'll be more taxes collected, more revenue for the state from billing activities that it can then put into other projects. You attract the best. But I think again, it then speaks to other bits, which again, I don't know whether our conversation also covers the government structure that we have in place. How feasible will it be to go and address that? Because I believe that a huge chunk of this challenge speaks to our style of governance. If those bits are not handled, if those bits are not treated, if those bits are not looked at, we will come back to this conversation 10 years from now. It will be our children talking about when will we have power supply in Nigeria, just like the way our parents did.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you, but I mean, at this maybe it's kind of moving into political economy. But you can't discuss economics without discussing politics in Nigeria anywhere in the world. Um, the some people say all this ultimately is the absence of allied consensus in Nigeria. But the question is,
Mhm.
I mean, I put it back to be how many people are actually allied in this country? Where are the elites?
Exactly.
How many? Like there are narrow populations. So I guess that's hard to crack. But one more story before we go. And this is I was joking with someone that we are going to see a copycat case in Nigeria. So Facebook or Meta, that's correct. Meta has been in the news this week. Uh, they've been had to court judgments against them, saying, look, they've not adequately policed their app in terms of usage and the damages the apps do to young people. In two cases, they've been fined. I mean, money is small change, couple of billions to Meta. It's not a big deal to pay it out. But I'm just wondering, on the Nigerian side of things, and I mean, I'm always very wary of Nigeria, but I think it's an issue we just haven't we are going to eventually have to address. It almost seems like there is there are literally no guardrails for these companies in Nigeria when it comes to user protection. So you might have the anti-competition body come up once in a while, but those are more of the economic issues. Oh, you need to have an office there. Are you paying the right taxes and all that? But do you think, maybe taking it at the global level, what do you think is the solution for? Because the social media platforms, your Meta, your YouTube, they say, look, we're a social media platform. There's a limit to how much we can actually safeguard young people. I mean, they've tried to have checks and balances and they do all these things, but they say, look, it's pretty much nothing we can do. Uh, On the Nigerian side of things, it almost seems like that's not the conversation we are having. So do you think, um, I suspect that, oh, we're going to have some government body say, hey, Facebook, Meta, YouTube, all of you, um, we're going to take you to court, and I'm sure the court probably will get you removed of some, still be some rule. But broadly speaking, how do you think, how do you think this will end? Because I don't see the solution. You have the terms and conditions, they've tried, but you're going to have young people unduly exposed to social media, unduly exposed to negative sides of social media. What do you think is the solution for Meta and other social media players? How do they solve this at the end of the day?
I think our the conversation is on our part is a bit complex in the sense that I know that I mean basically the Nigerian Data Privacy Act to some extent does give you some level of authority over your personal identifiable information. And the regulator, the Data Protection Commission, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember off the top of my head what the sanctions are. But again, in the scheme of things, we are talking about multinationals that are not domiciled in Nigeria, right? And um, if you are going to talk about the submission of which law is preeminent in, with respect to where they operate, we need to um, understand what our reach is and what definitely we can do in order to be able to carry out sanctions. Because I mean, we do remember the Cambridge Analytica incident
Yeah,
where they created this app and they were able to get over something million records of people, and then they were able to use that to build profiles. I believe those activities already happen. I mean, especially with our data in Nigeria. So the conversation for me, I mean, just like you stated, is there needs to be some level of lead, especially on what exactly our data is being used for. Obviously, we have been profiled. I mean, you can see the way Nikita talks about, I mean, the other day he was talking about Nigeria, and there was some level of that conversation. You could see where things are going, especially when it comes to monetization of contents of Nigeria on X, formerly Twitter. We need to start to speak to some of these things because again, I'm shocked that nothing has been done, nothing has been said, and again, uh, while there was this level of activity carried out during Buhari's time, where there was this ban on Twitter, which was um, which resulted in a pushback. I mean, we, till tomorrow don't know what has come off of that incident. Um, what needs to be done? Obviously, there needs to be that coordination and collaboration between government and these platforms. I mean, you're having situations where bandits are openly advertising on TikTok, for example. There needs to be actions taken out. There needs to be coordination between government and these platforms. I mean, there has been conversations about fraud too being popularly promoted to on social media uh, platforms, especially, I mean, the conversion again, TikTok. Um, not just TikTok, but again, other platforms too. If there is that coordination without looking like you are censoring access to facts, as well as the conversation surrounding the freedom of expression or the right to news. Uh, at some point, there needs to be that balance where government is able to say, no, this is not acceptable, and everybody is on board with that. And then also manage what government limits will be. Because, I mean, you can't say that people will not express themselves. But again, on the other hand, the ability to self censor. in this case, not government censoring, but self-censor what should be said. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we might just very well say we are in a jungle. So there needs to be that balance where government is able to call these platforms to order, so that we don't have uh, misuse of one's app. Because I mean, you can see a lot of. I mean, there was some point. I think that was last year, even at some point this year, where there were court injunctions flying up on Twitter, people suing each other for. Um, I think it had to do with false accusations,
Revolution, yeah.
defamation of character, false accusations, and the like. So there needs to be those conversations had, and the platforms can't say they are not culpable. I mean, you're providing a platform, there should be regulation, but it becomes a slippery slope. What is infringement on freedom of expression? So those things need to be concretized. If there's a need to amend certain sections of the Data Protection Act, that should be done. If there are aspects of our law that needs to be beefed up, especially when it comes to defamation of character or false accusations, that also needs to be attended to. But the platforms are culpable. They can't say there are technologies that can address some of these fears, right? But again, it's an area that our constitutional lawyers must also be up on their game of, so that I mean we don't have a situation where we revert back to what Buhari did, where he just said, "Look, by fiat," he woke up and then banned Twitter and said Twitter defamed him, so therefore the whole of Nigerians couldn't have access to Twitter.
Hmm. I mean, I think, I mean, I would say maybe with this administration to some extent, um, they they face some might argue deservedly deservedly slow, maybe because of the pain of the macro reforms that they're doing. They face a crazy amount of criticism, and you haven't yet seen that so fine amounts of censorship. I mean, there was this, I'm sure the clip somewhere where the President Tinubu says, "Look, I don't even go on social media because this social media they have used the hell out of me." So I guess maybe from that angle they may not so that, but my worry is we are a people of extremes. So we either extremely do nothing or we extremely do
Go
all the
overboard.
wrong things, go overboard. So I hope it doesn't get there. But I think this is an issue because when you look at it, and the focus is on Twitter because I guess maybe that's where the bulk of criticism is. But when you look at TikTok and what happens there, in I mean, I've not heard the federal government or any government agency say, "Hey, we're talking with the management of TikTok about what's happening there." I haven't heard that. So, I mean, you might have occasionally, okay, Twitter and Buhari and all that, um, Facebook or Meta from time to time. There's some conversation. They're facing one issue or the other, but nobody's talking about TikTok, and TikTok is wild. So I hope that that's a conversation that government looks at, and not just from uh, the U.S. government, some arm of the U.S. government has fined Meta for this. So you know what? We're going to take them to court as well, and we're going to get some money out of them because that's just the Nigerian thing. How to get money out of these guys? But I hope they look at that because I'm also with the elections approaching. I think that we're going to see a really, really wild time across social media. Um,
Yeah,
the
especially with
even now with
the
AI,
advances in AI. Yeah,
is
yeah. I
is
mean,
crazy
you see
because
what the Iranians are doing with those the short clips, the Lego videos, all that they are doing. I mean, all the contents they are pushing out online. you kind of like see that edge they have with the information war. Because I mean, it's a push, it's a push of ideas, and the person whose idea is sticky is what takes hold, what becomes culture over time. So it does, I mean, speaking to what you're saying, the government must be ahead of the conversation. It's not, we don't want, I mean, just like you stated, we're already carrying out fiscal reforms, macro on the micro side. There is a lot of pain that everybody is facing. So, and let's just let that become their avenue of outlet and distraction while we continue to. At some point, you try to kill a monster on one end, it morphs into something on the other side. So it's a conversation that must be balanced. Okay, we are addressing this. We're also addressing this. It's something that needs to be tackled. It's something must be done about it. Not just well, there's nothing we can do. There's a lot that can be done.
Mm. Okay. So I'd be watching closely. I think someone in government is going to wake up and say, hey, let's shake down these guys and see how we can get some money from them. Just go look at the precedents, legal precedents. Yes, but I just hope we leave the pedestrian things, not just the case of how do we get money from these guys, or as
Mm.
someone said infamously, um, which is just
It's
that really,
a money
we
grab
need
operation.
it's the money grab operation, or why don't they have a physical office in Nigeria? But I always joke
Mm.
with people that really, and after what happened with the episode with Binance,
Yeah,
a lot of companies are going to be skeptical, except I'm in a huge formal space. But a lot of companies are going to be skeptical about wanting to open a,
open. Yeah,
a, a branch in Nigeria, have a physical office in Nigeria, because how am I not sure that someone is going to tweet something or someone is going to share something on social media? Certain people in government don't like it. Next thing, people are going to get picked up. And
yeah,
so because the whole Binance and Gambian thing was messy. It didn't have
yeah,
to. It didn't need to get to that, really, and that's a story for another day. There were a lot of back end things happening, but really, at the end of the day, you could have tackled the company without having to pick up the staff. And I know it's a Nigerian thing that you know what, oh, we sue in the company, MD has to show up for a court case. We don't see the MD. Next thing you have a bench warrant for the arrest. So every now and then you have these issues, regular legal cases, and then oh, someone, the court judge says, where is your MD? Or opposing counsel says, the MD is not here. Benchmark warrants for his arrest. So I just hope we move beyond those levels and really look at this thing, because it's, I mean, when you think of it, I don't think you would see it happen in the US that you would have a, a mafioso flaunting looks on social media domiciled in the US. But when you have supposedly or allegedly you have bandits flaunting cash on social media, that becomes worrisome, because you could ask yourself, how is that happening? Why is that happening? What's being done about it? Is anything being done about it? Is that even a priority? Or is it going to be a case of, it's just TikTok, so nothing serious. So I think things will change. Maybe not now, but hopefully we move beyond just give us money, open an office, and we start to look at regulation. And I mean, Nigerians don't like regulation because regulation can be hard-handed in Nigeria. We start to look at these things. So in any case, thank you for joining. It was a great conversation, and we should do this sometime soon. Hopefully, hopefully we have the economy on the front burner before the presidential campaigns, start to happen
definitely.
and the likes. Because I mean, elections I think are January next year. A couple of months probably have campaigns basically start. So Thank you for joining and hope to see you. Catch you soon, some other time.
All right. Thank you, Onome. It's always a pleasure. I always tell my friends that Onome was the one who helped me spot Wema Bank at 67 kobo. I tell everybody all the time.
We
Even,
should.
even,
I
even,
mean,
even though I missed it.
but I'm keeping an eye on Wema because we're seeing I think last 5 6 days maybe 700 plus million shares traded, so something's cooking
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
We're waiting for the details. Hopefully, when the banking numbers are out, I wonder what's cooking with the banks. Um, yeah, but it it happens every now and then. And because when I look at the market, um, we are, Charles always says, we are getting to a stage where if we have stable macros, I think if we continue on the trajectory in which we are in another 3 4 5 years, I don't think you're going to see any stock in on the NGX as traded at 1 naira or 2 naira. Now,
yeah.
whether the fundamentals would
Matches it is a
justify
different
those
conversation. Yeah,
companies, that's a different conversation. But just when I look at it, I mean, 4 5 years ago, you probably had 10 15 companies that were trading sub 1 naira. But now I don't think you have more than three or four. So
yeah,
if you fast forward, um, you probably might just have one or two, you know, at the end of the day. But whether they're worth it, I think it's going to be an interesting year. Dangote is warming up
I
to
agree.
list his refinery. That's going to cause some shift in the market. I have my views on the refinery. I'm waiting for the prospectus to talk about it.
Come on. Yeah,
You're going to see money getting in and out. So it's going to be interesting and probably
yeah,
we'll discuss it. So we should catch up later in the year.
definitely. Thank you again,
All
Onome.
right.
Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Have a good rest of the day. I mean, for you guys in Canada, I don't know how you did. For me, I'm winding down, but I don't know how you guys. I honestly I don't know because balancing both time zones, I couldn't do it. I mean, from time to time, I try to follow the Kenyan market. But it's always tough for me because I think they have a 1 or 2 hour difference. So 6 7 a.m. Nigerian time, like they're already in
Up and
serious mode.
about. Yeah.
And I'm just trying to just operate here. So I just don't know how you guys do it. Honestly, I don't know.
You just have to
It's
figure
it's
because I mean
brutal.
I still try to keep up with the Australian market as well. I'm tracking the Australian, I'm tracking. I mean, with Trump, I just pulled out of the U.S. stock market.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, but
then you can,
I don't think the bigger issue with Trump is, in fact, the problem I have with the US now is the the damage to US institutions. It's not apparent now. It's
yeah.
post-Trump you're going to see
Yep,
because you're having a US that is isolated here and essentially isolated from its allies. And that's why this
yeah,
war has been a struggle because nobody is willing to stick to the US. And the simple reason was the US and Israel went on this expedition. Now, whether they had to do this or not, that's a different conversation.
that's a
But the
different
question is,
conversation. Yeah,
if you were going to do this, you should have consulted with Europe and everyone else, but you didn't do that. So now you have escalated things. You are trying to de-escalate. It's a problem because it's just the three parties and there's distrust. So my simple thesis for the US is, and it's a rather simplistic one, is I think if I recall correctly, the US is about 20% or 15% of global GDP.
yeah,
Um, Now, my thesis is obviously that will shrink over time. But in my view, I think that as long as the US remains somewhere between 5 to 10% of global GDP, then it remains an investable destination.
destination. I
Now,
agree.
if it drops below 5, that would have to review. And even
Yeah,
the fact that the US remains an or would remain an investable destination doesn't mean that now people have to do a bit more cherry picking.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
5 years ago, you just buy S&P 500, but now there's just so much uncertainty. So you have to ask
mm,
yourself, what sectors do I want to face? Certain sectors. I mean, the banks will always do well. They have huge banks. The tech firms will do well. They have huge tech firms. But the question you ask yourself is, what about the rest of the economy? And because the US
yeah,
economy is so consumer driven, if consumer purchasing power shrinks, or if for some reason you just don't have that, there's a saying in finance we always call the US, what's it called? Trying to remember the term.
that
Uh,
carry or the weight,
yeah, that's so first among equals, or just in a special lane of his own, or
yeah,
just a unique entity. If you remove that cover from the US, the question is, how then do you price the US? So it's hard to predict that. I guess we'd have to, and even for the Nigerian side of things, I think that we have everybody's focused on 2027. I'm not too focused on that.
mm,
I'm more interested in 2031, because if you assume that you have continuity, you have 4 years of the same thing, you can kind of predict the economy. The question is, who's going to be president in 2031?
mm,
So if I want to be invested in Nigeria for 15, 20 years, I'm not worried about the next 4 years. I'm worried about where do I think Nigeria will be 10 years from now? And the answer
from
is,
now,
I don't
yeah,
know, because you
yeah,
probably will have two, three presidents. So the
mm,
current president, I can estimate and understand. Whoever comes after the current president is what I don't know.
what I don't
So
know,
we
yeah,
have probably a 3, 4 year timeline to figure things out and then
out,
see how things
what
go.
comes next, yeah,
Yeah. But in any case,
okay,
this was a great conversation. And we should catch up later in the year and then review things and see how things are by then.
all right, thank you very much, and have a
All
beautiful rest
right.
of your day.
Thank you for showing up. Have a lovely rest of the day, and I'd send you the details. Typically, this podcast is up by Friday evening,
Okay,
Sunday morning. But as soon as it's up, I'd share the link with you. But I need a picture and the job title, whatever. If you want to call yourself IT guy, or like what's this guy's name?
for sure.
The previous guest, Fusha will tell you the IT tech bro that has a strong finance background. So
Okay,
whichever way, however you want to address yourself, is fine. Yeah.
all right, no problem. I'll send
All
it to
right.
you now. Thank you so
Okay.
much,
Take
Onome.
care. Yeah. Bye.